grade. It's Mrs. Roth again with your reading lesson for Wednesday, April 8th. We're going to start comparing and contrasting stories today. On Monday, we looked at the different elements of a story, and now we're going to use those elements to compare and contrast two books by the same author. The author's name is Leo Lionni. So we're going to go ahead and watch these two stories be read to you. And as we read, make sure that you follow along and remember the details as we go. At the end of this lesson today, you will take a short quiz over the books just so that you make sure that you are paying attention through them and that the teachers know that you did the lesson. So just follow along as we go.
Fish is Fish by Leo Lionni. At the edge of the woods there is a pond, and there a minnow and a tadpole swam among the weeds. They were inseparable friends. One morning the tadpole discovered that during the night he had grown 2 little legs. "Look," he said triumphantly, "look, I am a frog." "Nonsense," said the minnow. "How could you be a frog if only last night you were a little fish, just like me?" They argued and argued until finally the tadpole said, "Frogs are frogs and fish is fish, and that's it." In the weeks that followed, the tadpole grew tiny front legs and his tail got smaller and smaller. And then one fine day, a real frog now, he climbed out of the water and onto the grassy bank. The minnow too had grown and had become a full-fledged fish. He often wondered where his 4-footed friend had gone, but days and weeks went by and the frog did not return. Then one day, with a happy splash that shook the weeds, the frog jumped into the pond. "Where have you been?" asked the fish excitedly. "I have been about the world, hopping here and there," said the frog, "and I have seen extraordinary things." "Like what?" asked the fish. "Birds," said the frog mysteriously. "Birds." And he told the fish about the birds who had wings and 2 legs and many, many colors. As the frog talked, his friend saw the birds fly through his mind like large feathered fish. "What else?" asked the fish impatiently. "Cows," said the frog. "Cows. They have 4 legs, horns, eat grass, and carry pink bags of milk." "And people," said the frog. "Men, women, children." And he talked and talked until it was dark in the pond. But the picture in the fish's mind was full of lights and colors and marvelous things, and he couldn't sleep. Ah, if he could only jump about like his friend and see that wonderful world. And so the days went by. The frog had gone, and the fish just lay there dreaming about birds in flight, grazing cows, and those strange animals all dressed up that his friend called people. One day he finally decided that come what may, he too must see them. And so, with a mighty whack of the tail, he jumped clear out of the water onto the bank. He landed in the dry, warm grass, and there he lay, gasping for air, unable to breathe or to move. "Help!" he groaned feebly. Luckily, the frog, who had been hunting butterflies nearby, saw him and with all his strength pushed him back into the pond. Still stunned, the fish floated about for an instant. Then he breathed deeply, letting the clean, cool water run through his gills. Now he felt weightless again, and with an ever so slight motion of the tail, he could move to and fro, up and down as before. The sun rays reached down within the weeds and gently shifted patches of luminous color. This world was surely the most beautiful of all worlds. He smiled at his friend the frog, who sat watching him from a lily leaf. "You were right," he said. "Fish is fish." The end.
All right, now the second book.
Swim by Leo Lionni. A happy school of little fish lived in a corner of the sea somewhere. They were all red. Only one of them was as black as a mussel shell. He swam faster than his brothers and sisters. His name was Swimmy. One bad day a tuna fish, swift, fierce, and very hungry, came darting through the waves. In one gulp he swallowed all the little red fish. Only Swimmy escaped. He swam away in the deep, wet world. He was scared, lonely, and very sad. But the sea was full of wonderful creatures, and as he swam from marvel to marvel, Swimmy was happy again. He saw a Medusa made of rainbow jellies, a lobster who walked about like a water-moving machine, strange fish pulled by an invisible thread, a forest of seaweeds growing from sugar candy rocks, an eel whose tail was almost too far away to remember, and sea anemones who looked like pink palm trees swaying in the wind. Then, hidden in the dark shade of rocks and weeds, he saw a school of little fish, just like his own. "Let's go and swim and play and see things," he said happily. "We can't," said the little red fish. "The big fish will eat us all." "But you can't just lie there," said Swimmy. "We must think of something." Swimmy thought and thought and thought. Then suddenly he said, "I have it! We are going to swim all together like the biggest fish in the sea." He taught them to swim close together, each in his own place. And when they had learned to swim like one giant fish, he said, "I'll be the eye." And so they swam in the cool morning water and in the midday sun and chased the big fish away. The end.
All right. Now that we have gone and listened to both of those stories, we're going to go on to Class Kick. If you need to look back at the stories at all, you can always rewind this video. So we're going to get on compare and contrast stories. You do not need to do this with me since I'm just going to have it on the screen for today. We'll do this one together, and you can do one to later this week to practice on your own. So I already wrote the two titles at the top. We have Swimmy for title number 1 and Fish is Fish for story number 2. So we're going to look at this page. It is asking us how the stories are the same and how they are different. Okay, remember our story elements. We have our characters, setting, plot, and then we have our theme there at the bottom. So as we go, I have already typed up some answers so that it can go a little quicker, but I will walk you through how we do this. So we'll start with the characters. How are the characters the same? So if we look at both stories, we can see that both stories include animals that live in the water, right? All the characters live in the water. For example, fish, jellyfish, lobster, tadpole. Both stories have a character who is lonely. Remember, fish in Fish is Fish becomes lonely when Frog goes away, and Swimmy is lonely when all his brothers and sisters get eaten by the tuna fish. So as we go through this, just notice that I am writing these in sentences so that we can make sense of our reading and our writing. So how are the characters different? Those are ways that they're the same. How are they different? So Swimmy only has underwater animals, while the other story has Frog who goes above water. Also, Swimmy is about one main character, Swimmy, and Fish is Fish is about two friends, the frog and the fish. Okay, so that is how they are different, although there are some ways they're the same, some ways that they're different. Then we'll go down to the setting. So think about the setting of both of these stories. The setting, for the stories are similar because both stories are set underwater, right? And we know that we want to look for when the story takes place. We don't know a lot of information about that from these books, but we can guess that they take place mostly during the day. And how they are different is that Swimmy is set in the sea and Fish is set in a pond. Okay, so there's a little bit of difference there. We'll go down to the plots. Remember that the plot is just a fancy word for what happened in the story. So what happened in the story? When we look at how they are similar, we can look over here. Both stories have a character who explores and finds amazing creatures, right? Swimmy is in the sea finding those amazing creatures, and Frog is on the land. So that's one way that the plots are similar. Now we could probably find more ways, but we're just going to do one for now. Then ways that they are different. Swimmy gets separated from his family because of the tuna fish, right? So he is all alone because of that. But Frog chooses to leave his friend Fish to go explore the land since he has grown legs, right? He's able to go ahead and explore the land. So that's one way that they are different. They're alone for different reasons. One was by an accident and one was by their choice. And then we'll go down to the end here, which is the theme. Now, when we look how the themes are similar and how they are different, generally they're just going to either be similar or different. So the theme in these stories are more different. I'll show you the example here. So an example of how they would be different is that Swimmy and the red fish learn about teamwork, right? Teamwork would be the theme there. They use all of their little fish bodies to make up one big fish. Fish and Frog, on the other hand, learn that being themselves is the best that they can be, right? They're showing that fish is fish and frogs are frogs, right? The two different animals think it's best to be their own kind of animal. So they're learning about how to be what they were created to be, right? They were being the animal that they are. Okay, so those themes are pretty different because one is thinking more about a team and one is thinking about an individual. All right, so you will have time to practice this later this week and next week, how comparing two stories, how we can do that using the story elements. But for today, the last thing you need to do is go on to ClassKick, and you're going to go to the assignment that says Reading Wednesday 4/8. That's today's assignment. You'll go to the first page and it says Exit Ticket. Please restate the question in each of your answers. So there's just 3 questions here. Number 1, what is one way the characters are the same in Swimmy and Fish is Fish? We just talked about that, right? We just talked about how the characters are the same. So go ahead and say the characters are the same because, and answer your question. Please use the typing tool. Then number 2, what color was Swimmy? And 3, what farm animal did Frog describe to Fish? Again, these are just to check that you were listening and paying attention during the lesson. Once you complete that, that is all you need to do for our reading lesson today. Remember to keep doing AR reading. The quizzes will be open on e-learning days. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you guys on Friday.